Welcome to today's show. You've just tuned in to Street Talk, and I'm your host, Loretta Rose. As you are aware, we are facing unprecedented times. Life will probably never be the normal that we knew it to be. Life has been impacted beyond comprehension. But today, I pray this episode will bring hope and comfort, and that you will be reminded you're not alone. Our special guest today will share her professional knowledge and experience on how to cope positively in the midst of uncertain times. Hold tight. We're going to go through this together. You're watching Street Talk. I'm your host. You're watching it here on cable TV. Thank you for tuning in to today's show. As I promised, we have a very special guest. She is a psychiatrist, and she is going to encourage, inform you, and help uplift you with regarding this pandemic that we all are living in. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, Dr. Kashmira Parekh. Thank you so much, Doctor, for being on today's show.
Thank you for having me. Looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Well, this is a great time to have you on, and I had shared with you that we had some people in the community that had some questions, and they're dealing with a level of stress they've never ever had to deal with in their life. So, and before we go into some of these questions, because I know your time is very valuable, I was going to do a little Q&A with you. I want you to share with the community, when did you find a love for psychiatry?
All right. So when I first graduated from medical school, I was working in what we now call a family practice office with a senior colleague. And being there about 6 months, I noticed that some people who have been established patients for generations keep coming back. No matter what the problem, they don't seem to get better, whether it head hurts or tummy hurts or chest hurts or body hurts. So I got to thinking that there has got to be something more than this. And that's how the interest in psychiatry, or behavioral science as we call it now. And so I decided to come here to United States from India to further study. And I went to Emory University, did my psychiatry training there, and been practicing since then.
Wow. Oh, you have been practicing medicine for over 5 decades.
Yes, that makes me feel old, but it's true.
You are just a gift and have so much wisdom, and you're so passionate. And that's why I wanted to have you on, because you're just so passionate about people. And one thing I would share with those that are watching about you that I love, you said that you're not really, because I've interviewed you before, you're not looking to have new patients, even though you don't mind serving patients, but because you've done it for so long, you just want to help your community.
That is true. That is true. I love what I do. And so I continue in there. Yes.
Yes. Wow. So also, first of all, a question that I want to ask you is, for those that are watching and may not know the signs, what are some of the signs of depression?
Okay, so depression can present itself with different symptoms. For some, it starts with sleep disturbance, either sleeping too much or not being able to sleep. For some, it is losing appetite. For some, it is eating too much. For some, no energy, no desire to do anything, no interest, no motivation, as we call it. And they feel sad. They can't explain why or what's wrong. Of course, for some people, depression can be a reaction to a life situation, just like what we are observing now. Different things that bring on those sadness, that apprehension, not knowing what's going to happen, and in a way, kind of a fear and worrying. So, these all can go together as symptoms of depression.
Wow. What's the difference with depression and anxiety?
Okay? Sometimes it's very difficult to tease it out, but in general, people who are depressed experiences more sadness, more apathy, more lack of interest in their environment, and a general sense of helplessness or hopelessness. While people who suffer with anxiety disorder are more worriers. They worry about things that they know don't make sense and it's not rational, but they can't stop worrying.
Wow.
And sometimes they both can exist together. So it's not always easy to tease it out.
So, for those that are watching, because there's a stigma that has been around for many, many years, where some people know they need help, but they're afraid to get help because of medicine. So, if a person is dealing with depression or anxiety, I want to help the people to understand that if they ever had to be medicated, is there a possibility that they can come off of it at some point?
Yes, for many people, that is possible, that medication can help initially and can take them to a point where they are able to use other resources to help them get through. So, for most people, it is possible to come off of the medicine. For some people, it may not be possible, but then that's no different than so many other illnesses that we address. Like the common illnesses would be diabetes or high blood pressure or asthma, where people have to take medicine and for some rest of their life. And we don't seem to question that, do we?
That's right.
So for some, it may be that this is your brain health, and for your brain to stay healthy, you may need to take a pill for long periods of time.
Never looked at it that way. For your brain health. Wow,
Yes, it is,
that's a good point.
because that's where most of the symptoms resides, and that's where we see the function, because brain is one of your major organ after your heart, and brain, you couldn't do much without that, couldn't you?
Wow, never looked at that. And I think that will help a lot of us that's tuned into today's show about brain health. We think of heart health and all different other parts of organs in our bodies and keeping it healthy, but the brain, oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Yep.
So, Dr. Parag, I'm going to get right into it with some questions. I share with those that follow Street Talk Show, and we've had some adults, some college students to send in some questions and share some questions. And the first one that I'm going to ask is really the reason why this show was prompted. I had a parent that reached out to me and mentioned about being a parent. Her daughter is in high school, a graduate, and what can we do? She asked if we can do a show about encouraging the young college students, high school students that are about to graduate in for class of 2020. And this really hit hard for them and they feel so broken. So I want to help them transition from
Mhm.
where they are and stay motivated to where they
Yeah,
need to be.
right. Well, I can understand the disappointment, and as if they were, not given that opportunity, or something that rightly belonged to them was taken away at the last moment. So I understand the disappointment and the frustration, both for the college graduates and for the high school graduates, because the graduation is like the ultimate trophy or the prize that you work so hard for.
Mhm.
The other way to look at it, what you achieved, you will always have. What you don't have is others to be there to share with you. So we all have to be kind of creative and figure out ways to have those others important people in your life to be with you in sharing your joy and accomplishment. Definitely, it is not the same. I agree. But then life isn't the same around us in any way. And what's more important than for us to stay healthy and appreciate the life? Because if you are healthy, then other things will come along. My other thought is you will always have an opportunity to celebrate because we are used to have high school reunions and college reunions, right? So rather than waiting for 5-year high school reunion, we could have a high school reunion next year. And you may even think about doing your prom and other fun things at that time.
I like that.
I had a young woman who I saw in my office last week. She happens to be a high school to soon to be graduate. And when I asked her about her frustration, it was surprising because this young lady also suffers with a thyroid cancer. So she tells me that, it isn't a big difference for her because she knew with her illness, she wasn't going to be able to participate in many of these activities.
Mhm.
And that really took me by surprise in a way because we don't think about all those folks who, even in our normal situation, are not able to participate in these activities.
Wow.
So
That-
I just encourage folks to think about it in a wider terms. Think about it, what happens if you are not within that norm. So this is just outside of the norm and it's a temporary thing and you will still have all the achievement and accomplishment that you work so hard for. Nobody can take that away from you.
I love it. You
You
said it
know,
well.
yeah, nobody can take that away from you. So you have to be proud of what you achieved and you share with as many as you can in a different ways than the traditional graduation, either ceremony or the party or however way you
Yes.
were planning for that big day.
Yes. Well, we're going to see a lot of big reunions next year for these
Yes,
students, and I
yes,
love it. And some may even try to have some this year, I was told. They're just trying to find other alternatives. I
other
love that.
alternatives, right? Okay.
For those that are watching, if you didn't know, Dr. Parekh, she specializes in stress management and family therapy. I love her. She's just such a blessing. I love her love for her community. The next question, Dr. Parekh, this one's regarding relationship and marriages. Many of them are suffering. What would you say to people experiencing a failing relationship or marriage during times like this?
So often the marriages with any kind of sudden stress like this has a lot to deal with. The stress can come in form of change in your work environment, loss of job, loss of income, having to keep the family together. So it could be a variety of differences that a couple has to face. So it's not easy, and I can understand the strain it brings in the relationship. But like any stress and strain, a marriage has to maintain a positive and open communication and willingness to stand by each other, which I know in this part of our country with the religion so strong and people's faith as a big resource, that you believe in the marriage as an institution and you take your vows very seriously. So that is very, very important asset, I should say. So in sickness and health is always good to remember,
I love
though
it.
it is not sickness, but in a way it is, because nothing is normal.
Mm-mm.
Nothing is normal. So I would still emphasize the open communication and willingness to stick by, because this shall pass too.
I love it. I love it. That is great. That is great, Doctor. Dr. P. This next question is from a college student, and this student is 19 years old. And this student family is not from America, but they are US citizens now because they live here. So the culture here is totally different to what they're accustomed to. And the question is, how can you be happy during a time like this? They can't figure out, how can you be happy during a time like this?
Well, I would like for the person to ask himself or herself as to what is happiness. Happiness is an inner state of mind. It really doesn't matter where you are on the earth or what culture you belong to. If you are happy within, with yourself, then it doesn't matter whether you are in a war zone or whether you are in, North Pole or South Pole, or whether you are just within your home with your family. So I would like for the young person to think about what makes him or her happy, because it is also important that we maintain our sense of health when everything around us is not normal. So we have to reach out within ourselves. Ask yourself, what makes me happy? And it could be as simple as being able to get up every morning and have a normal day, whatever that normal is for me. If I'm still in school, I go to my classes online, I do what I'm supposed to do, right? And maintain that contact with reality. So, yes, the death around us and the destruction in a way is very, very touchy, and it can make you sad, and it can take away kind of that hope and insert that fear. What's next? Or am I going to be the next? Or my family going to be the next?
Wow.
But I suggest that instead of worrying and dealing with that fear, you translate that into an action. What can I do to stay healthy? What can I do to help that next door neighbor? Or how can I contribute to my community? Or what can I do to help those frontline workers? Or my neighbor, for that matter? How would I check on them? So I would suggest you convert those fears and worries into helping someone, putting into action, rather than going into that futile what if, what if, what if. You answer your own what if and move on with an action. And that's more helpful. About different culture, I know I am from a different culture, though I have lived here in America as many years. I still count myself belonging to two different culture, and we always have to juggle to match them and mix them. But I'm fortunate that I could have positive that both culture offers and combine them.
Wow. Wow.
So look at your strength, look at what you have. Don't look at what you don't have at this time.
Beautiful. That's great. And that's something that we all can apply. I love it. I'm going to ask another question before we take a break. This question is, how to remain calm and be optimistic working as essential workers. And I'm using essential workers because the particular question that came in was regarding health care. But we all know that that all falls under essential. And like you know, the healthcare has takes on a greater challenge because
It
they're
does, because they work day and night around the supposed danger, and their challenges are great because they have to maintain their own health. They have to be available during this crisis to the people who are sick and care for them. And sometimes that means that they are the only support system that the sick person in hospital has. So you are not just their doctor or nurses, you also have to take on being their family. And that is a lot of pressure. But I also remember being a healthcare worker myself, that most of us went into this profession because we consider that as our calling. I hear that every day, how so many people have gone to New York, the doctors or the nurses, because they feel this is their calling, they need to be there, and they need to do what's asked. So, and that's true for many frontline workers. They take their role and their duty very seriously. They are proud of being able to do their work and be able to help everybody directly or indirectly, whether that's your delivery man or whether that's your truck driver or whether that's your grocery store person or a cleaning person. They are all in this, and we all owe them a big thank you or gratitude. I think having that ability to appreciate what they are doing would go a long way for us and for them. It helps both. So having that sense of gratitude is very important to all of those frontline workers.
absolutely well said, doctor. I love it. We're going to take a short break, go into a commercial break, and then we're going to come right back. And when I come back, I want you to share with us what is unhealthy isolation. We're going to take a quick break. You're watching Street Talk, virtual Street Talk, here on CTV Beam. We'll be back after this.
And is this with the doctor or is this with the nurse practitioner? Fantastic. Dad, lunch. Got some soup for you.
You are loved.
Oh, you. Look at those freckles.
This was very much.
You are valued. You are strong. You are resilient. You got this.
You're there for them. We're here for you. Find free care guides to support you and your loved one at aarp.org/caregiving.
Welcome back. We're on today with Dr. Parak, who is with Georgia Behavioral Health Professionals. And she is a blessing and just wanted to enlighten the community and kind of uplift you to let you know you're not alone and you do not have to suffer in silence alone. Thank you again, Dr. Parak.
You are welcome.
Yes, so the question before we went to a break is, what is unhealthy isolation? And the reason I will say this question, before you answer this, we are in a state of isolation, being in quarantine. But when does that isolation becomes unhealthy?
Okay, so what we call social isolation or social distancing, it becomes unhealthy when you don't try and reach out to stay in contact with people that are close to you or people that you know. Now, for some, there may not be as many in their sphere, and that makes it a very difficult thing. And for some, not know how to reach out can also be an issue. But social distancing doesn't mean that you have to isolate yourself socially. So there is a difference between a distance and isolation. Now, yes, quarantine is where we use the word for the people who are infected, and it is not good to be close to them, but you don't have to avoid them either.
Oh.
Right?
Mhm.
So when you are in isolation in your home, largely, which is what most of us are doing, you could still stay in touch using your phone or your other device or your social media. Like for most young people, that comes handy. And stay in touch with people that you know, whether they are close here in community or further away in another state, and stay in touch. I think that's a better way to maintain that, and you don't get so lonely.
That's good.
On the other hand, if you have the time and ability, you also can help out those who don't have many to fall back on. You could volunteer your time and you could check on them who are vulnerable.
Right. Beautiful. That's good. Now, grief. We all know it's a difficult process, but what would you say to those that may be dealing with grief and really just don't know how to navigate their way through the process of grief? Because everybody deal with it differently. But I want to help families and people that are out there because, as you know, as a result of COVID-19, it has affected many, many lives. And I haven't had anyone in my family, but I've had some people that I know that have passed. And my heart really goes out to them. But for those that are trying to understand the process of it and not being able to be there for your loved ones.
That part is very, very difficult. Very, very difficult to see your loved one die in isolation. That's never easy. And that is the hardest thing for someone to come to grip with. You know, whether it's your mom or dad or brother or sister or your wife, you know, that is the time we all feel we need to be with our loved ones, whether hospital or home or nursing home or no matter where. We always expect that someone will be there to hold your hand or to see you take your last breath. And when that is taken away, it's not easy. It's not easy. I still feel that we are a little bit better off because of the technology. People still can participate in those last rituals, but it's not the same. Not the same. So my thought would be, since we grieve differently, each one of us have a different need, and how we deal with grief or loss is different. But at this time and during this special situation, if you at all can stay in touch with your family and help each other with the process, that's the best thing one could do. So take advantage of your support system, take advantage of the family, near and far, and support each other in your grief and loss.
Beautiful. Wonderful. This next question is, and you would know this more than us with, because I didn't, get the rates of it, but I've heard it was on the rise. This is the rate of suicide is an astronomical rise, as we all know, as a result of what's happening in the world. And I pray that this episode, this interview will help save lives. But what would you say to people that have allowed the thought of that suicide even enter into their minds?
Well, the rate of suicide, unfortunately, have been rising even before the pandemic hit. And then, of course, pandemic would take its own toll because it displaces so many people from their norm, whether they lose their job or whether they lose their income or whether they lose their family. So the losses have mounted. Even the normal thing that people take for granted, being able to go to school or college or to have a relationship. So many forces take part into making someone feel so down and depressed. And then the suicide is the next step. When you don't see any help, when you don't see any hope, then the suicide seems an easy, attractive option. But it really isn't. Because what we see is again temporary. The COVID-19 and the pandemic is not going to be here forever. We can't say when it's going to go away, but we know from our past experiences with different pandemic that they do get under control and they do go away. And if we maintain our hopefulness and resilience, we all can come out from that feeling much stronger and be able to rebuild our life. So suicide is never a permanent solution. It's a temporary solution. And that's what we have to remind for any problem, that we don't need just a temporary solution.
Wonderful.
So we have to go beyond the immediacy and say, hey, I'm going to be okay. And if I'm okay, I can make things better, whether it is a job or college or relationship or finances. So I would hope and pray that people don't look at it as a last thing, that there is a hope.
Wonderful. That's good, Doctor. That is great. In closing, I wanted to ask you to give us some do's and don'ts of mind health. You've really given us a lot, but just from maybe what's on your heart to share with the people or the audience, tips on some do's and don'ts that we probably didn't even cover.
Well, the do's will be to stay healthy. And that means you don't neglect your own health. You maintain your own health. And that applies to sleeping, eating, exercising, taking care of your own self, staying away from the hazard, the safe distances, and all the safe practices. So do invest into yourself and your health. That's very important. Just like the old saying goes, health is wealth. If you have your health, you always are wealthy. Okay, so that's the big do. Okay.
I like it.
Other do is go out and help others when you can. You can help in all different ways. If you have money, give donation. If you have time, give your time. If you can sew, make some masks, do something that helps. Go volunteer to your food bank, go check on your neighbor, do whatever you are able to. It's both way good because you feel better about helping somebody, and of course the other person enriches his or her life as well. So those are the do's. Don'ts, of course, don't despair. Don't get feeling hopeless. We have to stand together, band together, and deal with the common enemy. That we are all in this together. Do not look at what you don't have. Always look at what you have and how you can best use it.
I like
Okay?
that. I like
All
that.
right.
Wow. Well, that was wonderful. I love that. Great takeaway from today's show with Dr. Parekh. We just want to thank you again for your time, your generosity, because you didn't have to come on and share in this way, but you wanted to help your community, help those around the world. And we really, really appreciate you for that.
All right. Thank you. It was fun.
Now, Georgia Behavioral Health Professionals, that's in Columbus, Georgia, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'll try to have some information where people can maybe contact you or follow you all. And
Definitely.
yeah, because she's such a blessing. You're such a blessing. And I just love how you're always involved and want to be a blessing in the community. Well, God bless you. And thank you, Dr. Perez.
Thank you. All right. See you
All
soon.
right. Okay. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's show. As she have just shared, do what you can. I love her do's and don'ts. Go back through this show and pass it on to someone else. We thank you for tuning in to today's show. You've been watching it here on CTV Beam.